With the year winding down, it's time for my top five lists. Today is the final list, which is going to be my top 5 new games for 2018. So the qualifications for this list are pretty simple, games that came out in the year 2018. But how I've ranked them, I think, it's my top 5 list. Of course, I get to choose how they're ranked. And one of the ways I've ranked them is, I guess, based on their success level, how well they've done hitting the market, the response the market's had to them. The second part is, do they do something unique and new and interesting? And then the third thing would be, are they a success from the terms of like the key components, rules, models, and then the actual like delivery of it that the company did. So let's jump into top 5 new games for 2018. So in the number 5 spot, we have the Rangers of Shadowdeep, which is the cooperative miniature war game by Joseph A. McCullough, author of Frostgrave, that he has self-published, and I'll link that below so you can go and check it out. Now, why I love this game and why it's hit the list for me, even though it arrived late in the year, I think around the beginning of November, is because this offers something that's pretty rare right now in miniature wargaming outside of board games, which is a cooperative experience where it's you versus the game, as opposed to you and your friends versus each other. I love this arriving into the market because I think that there's not enough of it, and it really does sort of put a fine point on the fact that most miniature wargaming right now is dominated by this drive towards perfect competitive play. I find that actually has unfortunately tainted even sort of some newer releases very quickly, where the people that are having playtest the game or that are sort of getting very involved with the development and where it's heading through FAQs, rules changes, whatever, are very focused on trying to give the perfect balanced experience as opposed to offering a myriad of experiences that people can pick and choose from. The conversation is being dominated by one as opposed to the other. So I think Rangers of Shadowdeep is a very worthy inclusion in this list, and if you're looking for something to try that's not a competitive miniature war game, but where it's more like you and your friends having a D&D adventure together, where the game is coming at you and you're having to deal with it, I highly recommend giving it a go, and even potentially trying to incorporate some of its mechanics in other games, because I would love to play other miniature war games in other settings that are sort of handled by you and your friends working together as opposed to you and your friends working against each other in a competitive format. So that's number 5. Let's go on to number 4. In the 4th slot, we have A Song of Ice and Fire by Simon Games. That's a new rank and flank miniature war game based on the intellectual property of George R.R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire, more popularly known as Game of Thrones, because of the HBO series. And it is a rank and flank, squares moving around the table, fighting kind of game. It's a low fantasy setting where magic and sort of stuff have been replaced by an intrigue board. There's an off-table game happening as well that kind of replaces what you would see as like magical effects in other rank and flank fantasy style games. And it includes everything from cavalry to infantry, and not necessarily in a 1-to-1 scale. If you visualize each model as being like 25 guys, you would have a much more to scale engagement. But the models are beautifully done, and it passes the Christmas morning test beautifully in that you can be playing the game in under 15 minutes if all you do is unpack the models, put them on trays, and punch out the cardboard tokens. Fast to play, simple mechanics, pretty good missions, and so far pretty well supported as well, with ongoing releases and 2 new factions. We had the Night's Watch come out late in the year, and then of course next year in January we have the Free Folk arriving as well. I hope to see more of these single player starters from it as well. It made it onto my expansions list for top 5 expansions because the Night's Watch starter being so well done. Like, just you could open the box and play immediately, and of course the Free Folk one being in the same vein too. So very hopeful for this game. Of course, it is licensed, which means that because it's not being created by Cool Mini or not, they're using a licensed product. They have to mine the source material. They can't necessarily make anything new, but hopefully there's enough there in George R.R. Martin's books to have the game go on for quite some time. So check it out if you haven't already. Let's go on to number 3. In the third spot, we have Fallout Wasteland Warfare by Modifius. This was one of the model lines that I was most looking forward to painting this year, and I managed to get through the 2-player starter set and all of the training missions over the course of 2018. And it does a whole bunch of things really well, which pushed in the top 3 spot for me. It can be played competitively, it can be played in a campaign mode, it can also be played solo. There is a lot to this game, and the rulebooks are pretty chunky, and the game itself is crunchy enough that it really does echo early Fallout games, but of course it does have a high learning curve. If you love post-apocalyptia and you love the source material, again, this is a licensed game, so it's Fallout, and you'll have lots of your heroes from current games in this edition, but of course the subsequent waves that are coming out are going to mine the older editions as well. There's already been a pre-release look at the sculpt for Frank Harrigan, who is one of the bad guys from Fallout in the early PC editions of Black Isle Studios games. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this game. I'm loving the models that come out for it. Unfortunately, it got buried a bit behind for me by the huge wave of releases that came out over the summer, so I haven't painted as much of my stuff for it as I want to, but it's one of those games that in 2019 you'll see me painting and playing a whole bunch, and it's great because I can play it whether or not I have an opponent. So the fact that right now there's no Fallout Wasteland Warfare opponents for me locally hasn't been a problem, because I can just play it with the solo rules too. So anyway, there's number 3. Let's check out number 2. In the number 2 spot, we've got Kings of War Vanguard from Mantic Games. This is a great fantasy skirmish system that's open enough that you can use any miniatures you like, but it's also been really well supported upon release with a range of really cool models from Mantic themselves. I think some of the best sculpts Mantic's ever done. I painted up the Northern Alliance, and Owen painted up the Night Stalkers, and these models were fun to paint, easy to build, and great to just get on the table and play a game with. It's crunchy enough, I found, that tactically it's really interesting, and it uses a alternating activation system and a stress sort of exhaustion system that reminds me a bit of a more open-ended Bushido. So it scratches a whole bunch of itches all at once, and of course, because it's free to play, you can download the core base rulebook with starter lists for all of the factions in there. If you've just got a bucket full of fantasy miniatures, you can probably play this game right now just by downloading the rules and getting started. So really well done by Mantic. I've been waiting for a fantasy skirmish war, like more Warband style game, but this one also has some campaign mechanics for managing your heroes, giving them specialist classes, teaching them new skills, having like an inventory, a caravan of equipment, and even managing your camp where you have people back at the camp that can do different jobs and stuff too. So really enjoying it. I hope to play more of it this coming year, and of course I'll be painting hopefully a second faction for it as well. I really want to do my orcs. I'm looking forward to the orc starter and more orc units coming out as well. So yeah, let's take a look now at number 1. So in the number 1 spot, we have Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team. I think it can't be denied that Kill Team was probably one of the most successful launches of this year, and it was actually very well supported all throughout the year too, with some added add-ons of individual box sets for races, which gave them some new tactics cards, as well as the Rogue Trader box set that added a whole new table to play on, a new way to play, 2 new factions to the 40k universe with the Gellerpox and the Rogue Traders themselves, and then of course Kill Team Commanders. It's allowed you to play more heroic missions with big characters and add them to your campaigns as well. Now, I'll be honest, I have some criticisms of Kill Team. I think the campaign system is a bit light for what it is, but the reason it's in my number 1 spot is it was a product that was very much filling a void, I think, in Games Workshop's current roster for Warhammer 40,000. There was a huge community of people out there that you see every day posting up a squad of guys that they've painted that aren't necessarily going to build an entire army, but love just collecting that box of Citadel miniatures that they think is really cool, building it and painting it, and this was a game for them. It was a game you could play with a single box of models that you really wanted to paint, you spent a lot of time on a kitchen table sized board, and you could play it in about an hour. It took the best of what the new edition of Warhammer 40,000 was and boiled it down, I found, into a manageable experience. So I think that you've seen the reception of that game like blow up. It was actually my most viewed video of all time. It's got like well over 100,000, like almost 150,000 views was the Let's Play for Kill Team, and just the amount of activity still ongoing for Kill Team has been mind-boggling. And I think it's because there's tons of people out there whose ratio of time to ability to go out and have fun is skewed. So you've got lots of money potentially where you can go out and enjoy your hobbies, buy products to fill a niche, and spend a lot of time maybe solo like hobbying, which would mean like building and painting and doing stuff. but you also have a lot of time to play a game. You can get ready from the point at which you start a project to playing a game with Kill Team really quickly, and I think it would really just hit the nail on the head as far as a product that was in the right place at the right time for the customer base that Games Workshop had. So that was my number one for this year. So I hope you enjoyed my top five list for 2018. Join me tomorrow for my wrap-up of how the year went and what I think happened in 2018 as far as miniature wargaming. I'll see you for that tomorrow. Till then, I'm Ash. Happy gaming. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to support the channel, of course, like and subscribe and hit the little bell below so you get notifications when I post future content. I do post stuff 7 days a week. If you want to support the channel further, you can, of course, buy a t-shirt through Spreadshirts, buy a measuring gauge or objective markers from Death Ray Designs, or, of course, most importantly, there is Patreon. Patreon is what makes all this possible, keeps the lights on, pays for the studio costs, pays for the equipment, model costs, and everything else, and most importantly, puts food in my kids' bellies and a roof over their heads. Big thanks to everyone, past, future, who supported me. I do this stuff because of you guys, and of course, I will continue doing it as long as I can.